Tonight, pulling off a prisoner swap. A man born in Canada among detainees, now free.
Their brutal ordeal is over, and they're free.
The complicated collaboration that led to an extraordinary exchange. A summer gold rush in Paris.
You just watched history. This is incredible.
A new smartphone scam targeting SIM cards.
They're looking for juicy targets. They're looking for people where they can get a greater yield from.
And holy mola.
Pulling for all they're worth to drag this poor animal back into the water.
The mammoth rescue of a sunfish beached near the Bay of Fundy.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Mirella Fernandez.
Good evening. Journalists, spies, a hacker, and an assassin are all part of the biggest prisoner swap between the U.S. and Russia since the Cold War. The full exchange involved 24 people, including Paul Whelan, who was born in Canada, and Evan Gershkovich, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. In a complex choreography, each prisoner was escorted to Turkey for the official exchange. Whelan has spent almost 6 years in a Russian prison. His twin brother found out this morning that he was coming home.
We didn't have very high hopes that this was ever going to happen. We had been through 2 prisoner releases before where he had not come home.
The Wall Street Journal newsroom erupted in applause when it became clear Gershkovich was released. He spent over a year behind bars. CTV's Mike Lecouture tonight with how the pieces came together to make it happen.
Journalist Evan Gershkovich seemingly in disbelief. More than a year after being wrongfully jailed, he's finally leaving Russia. Hours later, he was relaxed and smiling, part of a 24-person prisoner swap, which included Russian-American journalist Alsu Kurmasheva and Canada-U.S. citizen Paul Whelan. Whelan's brother told ABC News after past attempts failed, he was cautious this morning.
I didn't really allow myself to believe that it was going to happen until I saw that announcement by the White House. And of course, we're overjoyed.
British citizen Vladimir Kara-Murza is another key figure who was also part of the prisoner swap.
Well, good afternoon. And this is a very good afternoon.
Surrounded by family members of the hostages, U.S. President Joe Biden praised allies who helped make it happen.
Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey, they all stepped up, and they stood with us.
As part of the deal, Russia is getting back a number of prisoners from multiple countries. Some experts on Russian affairs warn there's a reason President Vladimir Putin wanted them back.
These hackers, for example, could go back to, say, moonlighting for the Russian FSB or GRU security services.
U.S. officials confirm Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny could have been part of a prisoner swap before he died mysteriously in a Russian penal colony in February. Still, some see this as a bad example of hostage diplomacy working.
Russia should no longer be a place where you can legally travel to if you're a Canadian, American, British, or European citizen.
In a statement, Whelan's family gave special thanks to Canadian officials who also pressed for his release, adding they hope Paul will be given the space and privacy he needs as he rebuilds his life after being held hostage for more than 5.5 years. Mirella.
Mike, thanks for that. You may recall American basketball player Brittany Griner was released from a Russian prison in 2022. She says today she's head over heels that the Americans have been freed. Griner is in Paris for the Olympics, where Canada has grabbed another gold medal, courtesy of swimmer Summer McIntosh. As CTV Scott Hurst reports, Canada is also guaranteed another medal. It just hasn't been handed out yet.
Summer McIntosh is golden once again. The teenage swimming phenom dazzling the crowd and leaving the competition in her wake. Olympic champion in the women's 200-meter butterfly. Her third medal of Paris 2024, second gold of the Games.
She's 17. She's at her second Olympic Games, right? She is on the path to becoming, one of Canada's greatest ever Olympians.
To the boxing ring now, where Nova Scotia's Wyatt Sanford is poised to break a decades-long drought for Canada. He is guaranteed a spot on the podium after qualifying for the semifinals on Sunday in the 63.5 kilo category as boxing awards 2 bronze medals. Canada has not made the podium in Olympic boxing since Atlanta 1996. In Paris, the heat is also proving to be a formidable opponent.
It is hot here, there's no question about that.
Water stations and misting systems have been set up outside Olympic venues to help spectators stay cool.
There's no question it's an extra challenge that I'm sure at least some of them weren't really counting on and haven't properly prepared for.
Montreal's Félix Auger-Aliassime appears to be doing just fine under the scorching sun, taking down the 6th-ranked Norwegian Casper Ruud to advance to his first Olympic semifinal.
It's very fun to watch him, and I think going on this run too and making history is huge for his momentum as well.
His next singles opponent will be Carlos Alcaraz of Spain. Canada's medal count now stands at 8. We had 2 Canadians compete in the women's artistic gymnastics all-around final, Ellie Black and Ava Stewart, finishing 6th and 19th respectively. But it was superstar Simone Biles who stole the show once again, claiming her 2nd gold of Paris 2024, Morella.
She is amazing, Scott. Thanks. Israel says it got its number 1, confirming the death of Mohammed Day, the head of Hamas's military. He actually died in Gaza in July. But Israel isn't admitting to taking out another key Hamas figure who died in an explosion in Iran. CTV's Heather Wright tonight with stunning details about how that attack unfolded.
Thousands packed the streets of Tehran today for a funeral for Ismail Haniyeh. The political leader of Hamas was killed on Wednesday, reportedly by a bomb planted in the guest house where he was staying in Iran's capital. While Israel has not said whether it was behind the assassination of Haniyeh, it has taken responsibility for the strike that killed a top Hezbollah commander in Beirut. At Fouad Shukur's funeral today, the militant group's leader promised retaliation. There are no longer fronts, Syed Hassan Nasrallah said. This is an open battle, and it has entered a new phase. Israel has made clear its goal since the October 7th massacre is to destroy Hamas and take out senior figures, among them Mohammed Day, one of the architects of that attack. Today, Israel confirmed he was killed in an airstrike last month in Gaza. He was Israel's #1 wanted man for years, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, adding his elimination establishes the principle, whoever hurts us, we hurt him. Today, the U.S. Secretary of State urged restraint as the region teeters on the brink of a wider war.
It's urgent that all parties make the right choices in the days ahead.
Today marks 300 days since October 7th. The war in Gaza has killed an estimated 39,000 people, according to the health ministry. For Gazans and the family members of those still being held hostage there are worries the events of the last few days may delay a ceasefire deal even longer.
It hasn't got any easier after 300 days.
Today, Egypt said it plans to reach out to both sides in an effort to restart those ceasefire talks, which have been on hold since early this week. Morella.
Heather, thank you. New details tonight on the coordinated raids in Toronto that police say foiled a terror attack. We are learning how investigators tracked down the suspects, a father and son, to a hotel room north of the city. CTV's John Woodward with details.
Jointly accused, the father and son appeared separately by video link in a virtual Newmarket courtroom Thursday afternoon from Central East Correctional Center. The first appearance since the RCMP made public the allegations the pair, 26-year-old Mustafa and 62-year-old Ahmed El Didi, were poised to launch a terror attack in Toronto inspired by listed terrorist group ISIS, armed with an axe and a machete.
That could have been, a grave and serious attack.
On Sunday night, surveillance video shows armed officers descend on their home, one of two coordinated raids, the other at this hotel in Richmond Hill, where the pair had checked in on Sunday afternoon. Maintenance workers had repaired the damage on the third-floor room from what looked like a battering ram. Hotel guests said plainclothes officers appeared at the hotel at around 11 p.m. Sunday night. They heard a bang as a flash grenade was deployed in that third-floor hotel room, and then the fire alarm went off. The guests were told to stay in their rooms, and the LDDs were escorted out without resistance.
They felt that they had enough to go forward, and the public was not in danger.
So far, it's not clear who or what was the target, though ISIS may not be specific in its direction, said Mustafa Ayad of the Institute for Strategic Dialogue.
That includes groups calling for stabbings and using the war in Gaza as a pretext for those attacks, despite obvious ideological differences between the Islamic State and Hamas.
Ahmed El-Didi is also accused of an aggravated assault outside of Canada in service of ISIS in 2015. The pair were ordered not to communicate with each other and will stay on different ranges at Central East Correctional Centre for a week until they return to court. John Woodward, CTV News.
Protecting yourself just got a little harder. Police say scammers have figured out how to take over your phone number, giving them access to all kinds of things. They've arrested 10 people in Toronto in a scheme that has cost victims more than $1 million. CTV's Adrian Gabriel reports.
It's called a SIM swap. The goal is to steal your phone number and infiltrate your online accounts.
They're looking for juicy targets.
The first step of a SIM swap fraud takes place when someone is able to convince a telecom provider that they're you. The criminal then gives instructions to have your personal phone number transferred over to their own phone.
The phone number itself is used for two-factor authentication. So they'll go to something like their email and they'll hit the forgot my password button on the email. And that one-time password to take over that email account and change passwords is then sent to the suspects.
And from there, any account you have that has its verification tied to your phone number can be targeted. In Canada, police believe more than 1,500 cellular accounts have been compromised with over $1 million stolen. A digital forensic analyst believes that number is far from accurate.
I think it's much higher. I can tell you that we have clients that call us and say, you know, I was traveling and then all of a sudden I could locked out of my account. I think it's quite low. That's only the ones that they know of that are likely going to law enforcement reporting it.
According to police, telecom companies have a role to play in combating the cybercrime. In a statement, the Canadian Telecommunications Association say our members continually strengthen their security measures and verification procedures. In total, Toronto Police announced the arrest of 10 individuals who are facing a combined 108 charges.
We could see that one suspect device had been used to SIM swap 49 people total.
To protect your accounts, cyber analysts suggest trying to change your verification settings so that your passwords aren't sent through your phone number. Morella.
Another scam. Okay, Adrian. Donald Trump is still restricted when talking about his hush money criminal case. A New York appeals court is rejecting Trump's bid to get rid of the gag order. He says he's being unfairly muzzled. Trump can't talk about the prosecution team, court staffers, or their families. He's scheduled to be sentenced for his felony conviction in September. Coming up, the BC dam that is now a danger. The rising fear of flooding if it breaks. A massive landslide in BC has stopped a river from flowing. Now there are fears that the natural dam could break apart and trigger flash flooding. Evacuation orders are out for residents who live nearby. Here's CTV's BC Bureau Chief, Andrew Johnson.
The river is rising near Deb Ilnicki's BC ranch.
Well, we've never seen the levels this high along the ranch here.
A landslide hit nearby early yesterday morning, about 100 kilometers southwest of Williams Lake. It sent tons of trees, rock, and mud into the Chilcotin River, a massive dam now preventing anything from getting through. Above the slide, the backup has formed into a 10-kilometer-long lake.
If this dam were to break, it is possible that dozens of evacuation orders and alerts will be issued along both rivers.
The province has issued flood watches and warnings covering a huge area where 60 properties, including 12 homes, are now under an evacuation order. People are being urged to stay away from the affected area on the Chilcotin and the Fraser it flows into.
This is a dynamic situation, and we must be prepared for the worst case scenario.
A man who'd been out rafting on the river broke his leg trying to escape the slide. He was discovered by Ilnicki's husband, who contacted search and rescue.
They could then hear a noise and realized it was someone calling for help from across the river.
We then landed with a helicopter, hiked down the hill, addressed his injuries, packaged him, and brought him via stretcher.
The province is working with geotechnical engineers, trying to determine whether it's possible to slowly release water past the slide to avoid major flooding.
Provincial officials aren't putting a timeline on when the blockade could burst, sending a surge of water and debris downstream, but they call that the worst-case scenario. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
Severe weather is being blamed for the collapse of a tent north of Edmonton that killed one person and left several others injured. The tragedy unfolded at the Westlock Meditation Center, where around 200 people had gathered for an event. RCMP and safety officials are investigating. Health concerns have to be taken into account during heat waves. Much of the country is heading into the long weekend with weather warnings. CTV's Kathy Lee tonight with how the high heat is affecting the wildfire fight in Alberta.
The hot and drier conditions creating a dangerous situation for firefighters in Jasper. Parks Canada says the wildfire has grown 500 hectares.
Over the coming few days, we will see higher temperatures, lower relative humidities, and we do anticipate to see a more intense level of fire activity.
The intensity making the risk to the national park and town high. Preparations have been made to protect the town. Alberta is one of 6 provinces under a heat warning. Hot zones also in the BC interior, Saskatchewan, most of northern and eastern Ontario and the GTA, southern Quebec, and much of Newfoundland. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s for some parts. Add in the humidex, others could approach 40.
The heat comes from the south and invades the southern part of Canada and basically sits in place.
And the longer it sits, the higher the potential health risk for Canadians.
The older I get, I find that I don't enjoy the extreme heat anymore.
It's enjoyable, but it can get a little bit too much sometimes.
There is a call to name the heat waves in Canada, following countries like Spain and Greece.
It means more people could take things more seriously and be more inclined to take protective action to stay cool and safe.
Environment Canada says the heat warnings for central and eastern Canada is expected to last through Friday. For Alberta and British Columbia, it could extend into the long weekend. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Straight ahead, a domestic violence survivor demands an apology. Why a woman left a meeting on Parliament Hill in tears. A sexual assault survivor is demanding an apology from a Liberal MP. She says hijacked a meeting about violence against women. As CTV's Annie Berger-Oliver reports, the woman was so upset she stormed out of the room in tears.
When Kate Alexander came to Ottawa, she expected to be sharing personal stories about the impact of violent crimes against women.
Anna, what's your point of order?
Instead, she turned her back on a parliamentary committee, then walked out.
We are leaving. We will not ever.
Your mic is not on and no one.
Feeling silenced and hurt.
I won't allow myself or other survivors to be abused, and that's why I chose to walk out, because we need to take a stand against this.
Alexander got a call from the House of Commons last Friday.
Welcome to meeting number 118 of the House
asking her to speak at a rare summer meeting Wednesday.
I'm supposed to be dead. My ex was beating me. All 6'3", approximately 250 pounds of him, because he couldn't find his car keys.
But the focus quickly shifted away from the witnesses when the Liberals pushed to debate abortion rights.
We have refrained from putting motions like this because of collegiality, but at this moment, we're not, and I hope we can do a vote immediately on this motion, and therefore we can get back to our witnesses.
The Liberals and NDP accuse the Conservatives of putting together the agenda in haste.
I have spent my whole life fighting for these issues, and I wasn't even given a chance to put witnesses on.
This is something we've never done. We do not use victims and survivors' trauma to try to score political points in this committee.
The Conservatives disagree with that narrative, arguing the summer meeting was spurred by new data showing an increase in violent crimes.
The Liberal and the NDP have completely shut out
these witnesses from testifying, and it's absolutely brutal what has happened here.
To Alexander, the way MPs handled the topic, heartbreaking.
The conversation be hijacked and dismantled the way that it was so severely insulting, and it was intentional.
Tonight, Anita Vandenbeld says she regrets the distress that this meeting caused. As for the abortion vote she brought up, Morella, it passed.
Annie, thanks for the update. In Manitoba, a retired priest has been charged with repeatedly sexually assaulting a young girl in the 70s. 81-year-old Constantin Turcone is accused of victimizing an 11-year-old girl for 2 years. The victim, now in her 60s, reported the assaults in 2022. After the break, the flailing fish that needed a helping hand. How Nova Scotians came to the rescue. You've heard about beached whales. In Nova Scotia, it was a massive fish that got stranded on a sandbar. It took several people pitching in to get the fish unstuck. That's because it weighed hundreds of pounds. Here's CTV's Sarah Plowman with a team effort to get a sunfish swimming.
Floundering in Parsborough's harbor, sunfish aren't typically seen by locals here.
What is it doing here? Why is it in this small space?
Danielle Saratos grabbed a kayak to get closer.
It was exhibiting this really awful behavior where it was making sort of these concentric circles in the water.
The tide was going out. That signals trouble. The sunfish appeared to be in distress and became beached on a sandbar. Heavy and wider than a tire, it was stuck as strangers rushed in.
We had some fishing rope and things like that honestly, the animal is just so heavy that it just broke.
Sunfish are also known as mola mola, sometimes mistaken for sharks because of the large dorsal fin. They migrate north to feed. Researchers expect that's what this one was doing.
Got up into those other areas where you had the huge tides, the huge tide range, and the huge currents. It just got confused and trapped.
After rope and tarp failed, then came the tow cable.
You have 5 or 6 fully grown adults that are like pulling for all their worth to drag this poor animal back into the water.
Everyone was exhausted, some bruised or scraped, but they managed and rescued the sunfish.
It's one of those moments where you kind of restore your faith in humanity. But I think a step further than that is that it also shows the importance of science education.
So that instinct kicks in to help an animal in need. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
That is a big fish. That's a wrap of the day for all of us here at CTV National News. Thanks for watching. I'm Morella Fernandez. Good night.